Hey, what's up YouTube? You are tuned into Rules for Rebels, and we are back with episode 84 of Side Hustle Tuesdays, part of our weekly side hustling series where each week we share a story of a real-life entrepreneur or side hustler who started a money-making business or side hustle outside their 9-to-5 job. They typically do this with little to no money and with skills and equipment that they already possess. The product behind today's side hustle is one which brings a lot of nostalgia. Actually, this past weekend I had taken my girlfriend's twin nephews to an end of summer carnival at the church just outside their neighborhood, and after quickly running through all the tickets, they hit me up for some money for cotton candy. Well, it's not something I eat often, I have to admit. When I go to a ball game or state fair or carnival, along with some deep-fried Twinkies or Oreos, I'll normally grab a cotton candy as well, and that's what today's side hustler created. Cotton candy, but with a slightly healthier and more adult twist. Today's side hustler is Alicia Vimwala and her friend Margaret, both of whom are side hustlers and YouTubers. Alicia is a full-time mobile app developer for a New York agency. She also runs a YouTube channel and has also published a children's book, so she keeps herself busy and she's got experience with side hustles. Last Christmas, while hanging out with her friend Margaret, a fellow YouTuber and side hustler, they began playing around with a toy cotton candy machine that Margaret had gotten as a Christmas gift. The woman had an interesting idea for an all-natural cotton candy with slightly more adult flavors. The holidays passed, but both of them kept coming back to that idea, thinking about it, and they decided to revisit it. They began experimenting with different flavors. Rather than all the artificial flavors and dyes that are in traditional cotton candy, they decided to try making it with herbal extracts, plant-based colors, and specialty sugars. And while it's certainly cheaper to use artificial flavors, the natural stuff led to a higher quality product, a more adult flavor, and the cotton candy had a crisp, fresh taste, as opposed to that chemical-ish taste that sometimes cotton candy leaves on your tongue. As a total aside, this element of the story reminded me of an interesting Reddit post I saw recently. Here in the States, orange Tic Tacs, as far back as I can remember, have always been orange. In many countries, however, the dye color isn't allowed to be used, so they have to have white Tic Tacs in an orange-tinted glass case. And while pretty much completely unrelated to the story, people are becoming more aware and more wary of the chemicals and dyes they're putting into their bodies, so having a more natural cotton candy is definitely a selling point. Anyhow, back to the story. So just a couple months into their research, they had found their first 4 flavors. The flavors were mint, citrus, lavender, and rose. Not traditionally what you'd think of for cotton candy, which is what, normally blue raspberry, watermelon, cherry. As another total aside, I recently visited an ice cream shop that had a lot of these funkier flavors as well. It's called Jenny's Ice Cream. We have one in Chicago in Wicker Park. I recall seeing some out of state as well, so definitely worth checking it out. They have some funky flavors like cream puff, brandied banana, coffee with cream, churro, popcorn, whiskey, lavender, rose. So, these kind of funky flavors are becoming very, very popular. But again, back to the story. The next challenge Alicia and Margaret faced was one that's often faced by people with food-based products. The need for health department certifications, possibly having to use commercial kitchens instead of home kitchens, the regulations behind making a product that people are going to ingest is understandably a little bit steeper than some other products. As was the case with some other side hustle stories that we've discussed in the past involving food, certain products fall under what are known as cottage laws and allow sellers of certain non-perishable items to deal with a bit less regulation. This is what often allows smaller vendors at farmers markets to operate. Oftentimes, products that don't use raw ingredients are given a lighter burden to follow. For example, with a hot dog stand, it's much simpler because hot dogs can be eaten raw than starting a hamburger stand since ground beef needs to be cooked. The health rules regarding this, oftentimes don't require you to get all the certifications that some other foods would. Now, shortly after coming up with their flavors, a friend of Alicia and Margaret's approached them about catering an event, the Juilliard Alumni Benefit. So essentially, they would be catering. Fortunately for Alicia and Margaret, cotton candy qualifies for the home processing extension, meaning they could create it at home. Even though they could create it at home, to legally run the business as a catering service, they would still need to register their business with the state of New York, get liability insurance, a temporary New York food license, and a food protection certificate. While they did have to navigate some paperwork, it wasn't too overwhelming, and it's only set them back about $800. As the date of the event approached, they realized their cotton candy maker couldn't feasibly keep up with making enough for the event, so they bought a commercial cotton candy maker that would make 1 cone every 2 minutes. This brought the startup cost to just over $1,000, so not too steep. They really wanted to wow the crowd, so the weekend before the event, they invited some friends over to decorate the paper cones. They decided to decorate them and add some gold glitter to give it a feeling of whimsy and really add to the presentation of the cotton candy. The event came and went and was a huge success. People loved the nostalgia of eating cotton candy. They loved the unique flavors even more. And opposed to the traditional raspberry or cherry, they had their 4 signature flavors, which people loved and thought were a really interesting twist. The girls continued to do some more events. Then one day while walking around New York, Alicia saw a sign for a shop selling lavender hot chocolate. She went inside and tried it, and she loved the flavor. After returning home, she sent a cold email to the owner talking about how much she loved the hot chocolate, and she happened to mention that she also had a lavender product, her lavender cotton candy. Thanks to that email, their cotton candy will soon be on the shelves of that store. With that one under their belt, the girls decided to pursue more long-term partnerships with other shops and businesses. However, now as they began exploring this additional avenue and this additional revenue source, they realized one problem. Cotton candy doesn't have a very long shelf life, and it's a delicate food. If any of you guys have ever tried those prepackaged cotton candy treats that you get at like a Blockbuster back in the day, or even a convenience store, it maintains the taste of cotton candy. The texture is completely lost when the product is packaged long term. So that was the next challenge, figuring out how to better package cotton candy while maintaining the texture and integrity of the product. In the meantime, they kept doing events and pop-up services. They did the New York City Dessert Festival, a cotton cocktails party where they served their cotton candy over wine and champagne, and several other events, and the events kept coming. They were working on the packaging and shelf life with the hopes of eventually figuring it out and getting on the shelves of stores, as well as potentially expanding into e-commerce. They wound up finding and enlisting a co-packer who knew more about food science and the science behind making and packaging foods, and they figured out a way to create a longer shelf life while maintaining that delicate texture of cotton candy. They'll begin shipping out through the e-commerce business model later this year, and right now, if you live in Brooklyn, you can actually buy their cotton candy through Postmates. Moving forward, the women are looking at potentially opening up their own storefront, while still doing pop-up shops and events to get their name out there and keep the money coming in so that they can continue investing into expansion. Now, that's the interesting thing about this side hustle story, is that it actually involved 3 different business models. They first started off with catering, which worked since the product needed to be fresh. After partnering with a co-packer who could help them gain a longer shelf life, they began expanding into getting their product onto store shelves, and they followed that up with their future plans to go into e-commerce and sell directly to customers. While all 3 business models are great, what's really going to springboard their business, in my opinion, is now that they figured out the packaging and can go into e-commerce. It's hard to scale when you're doing pop-up shops and catering events. The women can only be in so many places at one time, but e-commerce opens up the opportunity for a more passive income or a more leveraged income in the sense that they can serve a lot more customers through that method. Cotton candy is a nostalgic food and leads to impulse buys, which makes the catering and events work well. And e-commerce is with e-commerce, not only can they potentially really grow an online following, but I imagine a lot of their e-commerce customers will be people who first tried their product at an event, so that should really help spur sales as well. I think this element of the story really illustrates that there's more than one way to make money. Well, eventually it's probably smart to focus your efforts on a specific sales channel or specific method. Early on, there's no harm in trying different things and seeing what works. I'm going to set myself a reminder on my Google account to check back on their store in a couple months. And if it's live, I'm going to go ahead and order all 4 flavors. I'll make a follow-up video, review them, and let you guys know how they are. Anyhow, guys, that's today's side hustle story. I thought it was a fun one. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Until next time, this is Rules for Rebels and Side Hustle Tuesdays, signing out.